They use different formulas.
Oh, they change their mind whenever they want to.
They change their mind. But I think it's important to know that Social Security is a program of Congress. Congress passed it. Congress can and does change it frequently, and Congress could abolish it. There is no constitutional right to Social Security. There is no contractual right to Social Security.
It would be extremely hard to do since we've all paid into it.
That's
in
right.
anticipation of, I mean, when you die, you lose all your, that's the part that you don't have control over. If you die, it's gone.
That's right. It's gone.
But and that's the piece that people said if we could save it privately and make our own choices, then somebody would inherit that money rather than the government getting it.
That would be like an annuity, a contractual right to a sum of money. But it was never intended to be, I suspect, an actuarially sound system. As long as more people were working and paying in, it was a transfer scheme. And the fact is that there are fewer people paying in per worker or per retired worker than there used to be. And so the money is being used from the trust fund.
Well, that's the piece, but also it has become something people depend on more and more because they know it's there. It's a big chunk taken out of your paycheck, and so savings have decreased.
Yes.
And so people are relying on it more and more, and it has answered that call.
Yes.
And built that idea.
And I think the benefits are pretty generous. I know if I look at having drawn Social Security for 15 years, I've drawn out more than I put in.
In just 15 years?
In just 15 years. Whether that's deserved or not, I won't say, except that that's the way the system works. And, it's nice to have, sure, but I suspect that Congress is going to have to deal with the issue of means testing Social Security. The people who are in the upper income brackets who draw Social Security are going to have to give some of it back. I wonder how that's going to play out.
Well, maybe not give it back, but not get so much.
Maybe,
it would probably be a much easier way to do it.
And I know the former budget director, Peter Orszag, and another Peter named Peter Diamond wrote an extensive treatise on saving Social Security. And it's a very interesting book. And they lay out what the problem is. And the problem really is there's a huge unfunded liability in Social Security. That liability is, to go back to my situation, that if I paid in plus interest to have X dollars and I was drawing that as an annuity, that's one thing. But I've paid in, I've drawn out, and I'll continue to draw out more than I put in, and that's an unfunded liability. Congress didn't set that up as one of the conditions of my drawing Social Security.
Right, they didn't say you're capped.
And they didn't say I'm capped.
Which basically would have put Congress into a savings vehicle for you if there was a cap. You put X amount in, you get X amount out.
Right. But that isn't the way it works. It's it's an income transfer scheme, and in effect it's a welfare scheme, if you want to put it that way. All of the tax money goes into a pot and people draw out of it. Now people who don't live to draw it out, their money is gone. That goes to help people who live longer. And so you can't outlive Social Security, which is a nice thing to have, I suppose. But I think that we have to deal with the impact of this unfunded liability on the future tax base.
Yeah, and so this example of Social Security, you can see how the way that's been set up, it dictates people's behaviors.
Yes.
They'll save less, or they'll work. I mean, certain people work toward the last 3 years, I think, or something that of Social Security, whatever that highest income is what dictates what you'll get back. So they might, not contribute that much to the system, but know that last 3 years they need to, before they retire, they need to kick in more, and so they get more back. I mean, those kinds of things, people can figure those things out. There's no question about it. But let's talk about taxes in general. the more, suppose we don't, oh, first of all, let's talk about what's the difference. I want to talk about what's the difference between a tax cut and a tax credit. We hear these terms nationally going back and forth, and I think there's a difference between the two.
Well, a tax credit is a direct dollar offset to your tax liability. For example, I think this was if you bought a hybrid car, you could get a tax credit of some, say, $2,000. I'm not sure of the figures.
Yeah, but you got $2,000 off the price of that car.
No, you bought the car.
Bought the car.
Then when you came to file your tax return and you figured out that I have $5,000 in tax liability, then you say $5,000 less the $2,000 tax credit.
Oh,
So it's a direct offset. It's a very powerful tool if you want to direct somebody's activity to say, well, we'll give you a tax credit. Now, you'll hear a lot in the discussion of taxes about small business gets a tax credit for hiring an employee. That was one of the discussions a couple of years ago.
One of the carrots thrown out there.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if a small business has taxes, then the tax credit is something. But if they're not making any money, the tax credit's lost. And a lot of small businesses aren't making enough money so that tax credit would make them hire somebody.
So therefore, that's why we haven't seen that particular program or attempt work at this point, in a substantial way.
That's one consideration, certainly. That, and business people are very practical. That they will hire somebody if they can see that they really need that person. So if you have more business than you can handle, you're going to go out and hire somebody. But just saying, well, here's a tax credit if you hire somebody isn't going to be enough.
When businesses have to pay the salary, they have to pay workman's comp, they have all these health benefits, all these stuff that dwarf that benefit.
Yes, they do, and that's a real challenge for a business owner, especially a very small business owner, to hire somebody and pay them a living wage, whatever that means.
Yeah. So a tax cut basically reduces the tax rate.
That's what Congress does. They can say, we're going to cut taxes by changing the rate of tax on a particular activity. Let's say, and let's take it broadly, people making $50,000 or less, their tax rate will be cut.
From, let's say, 12% to 10%.
Something like that. It may be that they're maybe they're in the 15% tax bracket or something like that. So if you say we're going to cut their taxes, you're saying we're going to cut the rate. They don't say you're going to go from 5,000 to 4,000. They will just say we're going to change the rate at which your tax is calculated.
And so that puts then the people know that they have less tax to pay.
Right. If they make that same amount of money.
And then you assume if they have less tax to pay, they have more money in their pocket to make decisions on, and then that puts that person in charge of what the market forces, how they push them. That's
right. A tax is a cost. So, for example, if you burn fuel oil and you pay $2 a gallon this year, and $1.50 a gallon next year, and you use the same amount of oil, you've got an extra 50 cents a gallon to spend as you wish. And it works the other way too.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that from what I'm hearing, people are saying a tax cut, which is what the Bush tax cuts were. They just reduced the rate of tax. Is almost a more freeing thing. Whereas a tax credit, you have to buy that car. You have to buy that specific, you have to jump through the government's hoops. But we've run out of time. But Chris, thank you so much for enlightening. You always enlighten me, and I always learn something, and I appreciate it very much. And we thank you for watching. You've been watching Neighbor to Neighbor. My name is Lynn Corum. I've been here with Chris Brown, and we hope to see you on our next show.